The sun rose over the rolling hills of New Haven Colony, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. 10-year-old Lisa Campbell skipped along the edge of the forest, her sample bag bouncing against her hip. Her blonde pigtails swung with each step as she hummed a tune her father had taught her. Just 3 more types of leaves, she whispered to herself, checking her digital notepad. Her science project on local plant adaptation was due next week, and she wanted it to be perfect. Lisa spotted a bush with unusual purple-tinged leaves and rushed toward it. She didn't notice she had crossed into the yellow warning zone, an area her parents had told her never to enter. The border markers were faded after years of weather damage, and no one expected Imperial ships to patrol this far from the main transit routes. In orbit above New Haven, Captain Zorvac of the Imperial scout vessel Unyielding Doctrine noticed an anomaly on his scanners. "Commander, I'm detecting movement in Restricted Zone 7. His security officer reported. "Appears to be a single life form." Zorvac's scaled skin tightened around his neck, a sign of tension in his species. "Deploy a scout drone. If it's those humans testing our borders again, I want visual confirmation." The drone descended silently, its cameras focusing on Lisa as she carefully placed leaf samples into her collection bags. "It appears to be a small human, Captain," the officer stated, "carrying unknown containers and a data device." Zorvac's eyes narrowed. The Empire warned these colonies repeatedly. This is clearly an intelligence-gathering operation. He didn't consider that the colonies had children. In Imperial culture, young were kept in educational compounds until maturity. The concept of a child roaming freely was foreign to him. "Weapons ready," Zorvac ordered. "We will make an example as per Directive 16. On the ground, Lisa looked up as shadows passed overhead. Her eyes widened at the sight of the Imperial scout ships, their angular hulls gleaming in the sunlight. She had seen pictures in school, but never in person. "Cool," she whispered, reaching for her notepad to take a picture for her friends. The Imperial ships opened fire without warning. Energy bolts struck the ground around Lisa. She didn't even have time to scream before a direct hit vaporized her small body, leaving only a scorched patch of earth and her partially melted sample bag. Frank Campbell was reviewing construction plans for the colony's new agricultural dome when the emergency alerts blared. As colony administrator, he was immediately notified of any border incidents. "What's happening?" he asked the security chief who burst into his office. "Imperial ships fired on someone near the northern border," the man said, his face pale. "We're still identifying." Frank's personal communicator buzzed. It was his wife, Marie. "Frank," her voice cracked. "Lisa isn't at school. Her teacher said she was collecting samples this morning for her project." Frank felt the blood drain from his face. "Northern Forest Edge." "Yes, how did you?" Marie's voice trailed off as she made the connection. Hours later, Frank and Marie stood in the colony's medical center, staring at the few remains recovered from the site. Lisa's churred notepad displayed her final project notes. Hypothesis: plants near the border grow differently because of soil differences. The official communication from the Empire arrived that evening. It was cold and direct. A human intruder was neutralized in restricted Imperial territory. The incident is considered closed. Further violations will be met with colony-wide sanctions. When Frank demanded justice through diplomatic channels, the Empire's response was equally dismissive. The human was engaged in unauthorized activity in a restricted zone. While the death of an intelligence operative is regrettable, it was justified under Imperial security protocols. The colony held a memorial service the next day. Frank stood beside the empty casket, Lisa's favorite stuffed animal placed where her body should have been. As colony administrator, he was expected to maintain diplomatic composure. But as a father, all he felt was rage. They didn't even acknowledge she was a child, Marie whispered, clutching her husband's hand. That night, after the mourners had gone, Frank made a call to Earth using his emergency authorization codes. He requested to speak directly to General Alan Wright. "Sir," Frank said when the general's face appeared on the secure channel. The Empire has gone too far. I'm formally requesting activation of the Lazarus Protocol. On the other end of the transmission, General Wright's expression darkened. Are you certain? Frank, once we wake them, there's no going back. Frank looked at Lisa's photo on his desk. They killed my daughter for collecting leaves, Alan. Wake them all. Deep beneath the gray, dusty surface of Earth's moon lay a secret that few humans knew existed. The facility had no official name, only a designation, Complex Zero. Its walls were made of thick lunar concrete, designed to withstand both attacks from outside and what might happen inside. General Alan Wright stood before the main cryogenic chamber, his weathered face reflected in the frosted glass. At 68, he had hoped never to issue the command he just gave. Behind him, 5 members of the Emergency Council shifted nervously. Are we certain this is the appropriate response? Asked Counselor Patricia Bell, her voice echoing in the cold chamber. The death of one child, however tragic. One child today, General Wright interrupted. An entire colony tomorrow. You've all read the intelligence reports. The Empire is testing us, looking for weaknesses. The general placed his palm on a scanner, and the room hummed to life. Lights flickered on along the walls, illuminating 27 frosted pods arranged in rows. The Titan program was shut down for good reasons, said Counselor Henry Davis, the oldest member present. I was there when we made that decision. Those soldiers are the reason humanity still exists, Wright said sharply. Yes, they were dangerous. Yes, they were unstable, but they were also the only reason the scarring war didn't end with our extinction. The general led the council members to a central console where he entered a series of codes. A large screen displayed files and images of men and women in military uniforms, their faces stern and eyes unnaturally focused. 27 Titans remain in stasis, Wright explained. The most powerful fighting force ever created by humanity. Enhanced strength, speed, reflexes, tactical implants connected directly to their brains. Bodies that can heal from wounds that would kill normal humans. Patricia Bell stepped closer to the screen, studying the faces and the psychological issues, the reason they were frozen in the first place. Wright's face darkened. They were made for war, then had no place in peace. Some couldn't adjust. Some didn't want to. They were weapons with human faces. The general pulled up another file, the official report from New Haven Colony, including images of the scorched ground where Lisa Campbell had died. Nothing remained but ash and a partially melted sample bag. The Empire believes we've grown soft, Wright said quietly. They think 70 years of peace means we've forgotten how to fight. In the corner of the room, a communication screen lit up. Frank Campbell's face appeared, his eyes red from crying, but his voice steady. Has the council made their decision? He asked. Counselor Davis stepped forward. Mr. Campbell, we understand your grief, but the Titans were decommissioned because they were deemed too dangerous. Awakening them could lead to... My daughter was collecting leaves. Frank interrupted. She was 10 years old. The Empire killed her and called her a spy. Then they threatened our entire colony if we complained too loudly. Silence filled the room. Finally, Counselor Bell spoke. The vote is 3-2 in favor. Operation Lazarus is approved. General Wright nodded and entered the final authorization code. Throughout the chamber, the cryogenic pods hummed as their systems began the careful warming process. Dr. Nash to Cryo Bay. Wright announced over the facility's communication system. Repeat, Dr. Olivia Nash to Cryo Bay immediately. 10 minutes later, Dr. Nash rushed into the chamber. She was in her 40s, with short black hair and the focused look of someone who rarely wasted time on pleasantries. You're actually doing it, she said, looking at the activating pods. After all these years. The revival order is signed, Wright confirmed. How long until the first one is awake? Dr. Nash moved to a monitoring station, checking the vital signs appearing on the screens. The process can't be rushed. 18 hours for the first revival, then one every hour after that. Major Harding's pod will be first, as protocol dictates. Steve Harding, Wright murmured, the most decorated and the most feared. And potentially the most unstable, Dr. Nash added quietly. In the central pod, frost slowly melted from the glass, revealing the face of a man who looked to be in his mid-30s. His eyes remained closed, but the monitors showed increasing brain activity. Counselor Davis stood beside General Wright, watching the pod. God help the Empire, Davis whispered. They have no idea what they've just awakened. God help us all, Wright replied. Because once the Titans are awake, not even we can control them. Dr. Olivia Nash checked the vitals on the central pod for the 5th time in an hour. The man inside was slowly waking. His heart rate increased, and his brain showed patterns moving from deep sleep toward consciousness. Major Harding's revival is proceeding normally, she told the medical team. Prepare for emergence. The pod hissed as it opened. Steam rose from inside as the lid lifted. For a moment, nothing moved. Then a hand gripped the edge of the pod. Major Steve Harding sat up slowly. His muscles tensed and relaxed as if testing that they still worked. His eyes opened, revealing an unusual amber color, a side effect of the enhancements. He looked around the room, taking in every detail with a soldier's precision. Date. His voice was rough from disuse. April 7, 2157, Dr. Nash answered. You've been asleep for 73 years, Major. Steve's face showed no surprise. He had gone into cryo knowing he might never wake up. The surprise was that they needed him again. Why? He asked simply. General Wright stepped forward. The Galactic Empire killed a human child and refused to acknowledge wrongdoing. We believe they're testing our defenses for a larger attack. Steve nodded once. He understood what was not being said. They had awakened him to send a message. The Titans were not peacekeepers. They were the most severe warning humanity could issue. The others? Steve asked. Being revived one by one, Dr. Nash explained. Your second in command, Captain Karen Lewis, will be next. Then Lieutenant Greg Bennett. Steve swung his legs over the side of the pod. The medical team moved to help him, but he waved them away. He stood on his own, his body remembering its strength faster than normal soldiers could. The Titan program had made sure of that. I want to see the file on the child, he said. An hour later, Steve sat in a small room, reviewing the details of Lisa Campbell's death. He studied her school pictures, her science project notes, and the Empire's cold response. His face remained blank, but his hands gripped the edge of the table hard enough to leave dents in the metal. The door opened, and Captain Karen Lewis walked in. She was shorter than Steve, but moved with the same controlled power. Her revival had been completed ahead of schedule. They wake us because a child died, she said without greeting. It wasn't a question. They wake us because they're afraid, Steve corrected. The child is just the beginning. The Empire is planning something bigger. Karen nodded and sat across from him. I remember going to sleep, she said. I remember why. Steve's mind flashed back to their last mission before Cryo. The colony uprising on Titan Moon. The civilian casualties. The Titans had been created to protect humanity, but their methods had become too extreme for peacetime. We did what was necessary, he said quietly. Did we? Karen's enhanced eyes, green with gold flecks, locked onto his. I still hear the children screaming from that school. Steve looked away first. We all carry ghosts. The door opened again. Lieutenant Greg Bennett walked in, followed by 4 more Titans. Their bodies were still adjusting to being awake, but they moved with deadly grace. Gang's getting back together, Greg said with a grim smile. Just like old times. Not quite, Steve replied. Last time, we were fighting for survival. This time, we're fighting for justice. Greg laughed without humor. Is that what they're calling revenge these days? General Wright entered the room with Dr. Nash. The general looked at the gathered Titans with a mixture of awe and unease. "We've prepared a briefing on current military technology and Imperial capabilities," Wright said. "You'll need to adapt quickly." Steve stood, and the others followed his lead. "How many more of us will you wake?" "All 27, Wright answered. The council wanted a measured response, but I convinced them that half measures would only encourage the Empire. Steve's enhanced mind calculated odds and strategies automatically. 27 Titans against an empire spanning hundreds of worlds. The numbers should have made victory impossible, but Titans didn't care about impossible. "I want to meet the parents," Steve said suddenly. "The girl's parents." Wright hesitated before answering. "Frank Campbell is coming here tomorrow," he insisted. Steve nodded and turned to his team. "Rest. Recover. Tomorrow we begin." As the other Titans left to find their quarters, Steve remained behind. He looked down at Lysa Campbell's picture one more time. "What do you want from us, Major?" Dr. Nash asked quietly. "The same thing we always delivered," Steve replied. "A miracle. Or a nightmare. Depends which side you're on." Frank Campbell's shuttle landed at Complex Zero the next morning. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. His wife Marie had stayed behind at the colony to manage the growing crisis. Imperial ships had increased their patrols near New Haven since Lisa's death. General Wright met Frank in the landing bay. "The Titans are awake," he said. "Most of them, at least. The last few will come out of Cryo by tonight." Frank nodded. "I want to see them." Wright led him through the facility to a large training room. Inside, 20 Titans were practicing with weapons that looked too small in their enhanced hands. Some were sparring hand-to-hand, moving faster than normal humans could follow. Others studied holographic displays of Imperial ships and bases. Major Steve Harding broke away from the group when he saw Frank enter. He walked over, his movements fluid and controlled. He stopped a respectful distance away and stood straight. "Mr. Campbell," Steve said, "I'm sorry about your daughter." Frank had prepared himself to meet these legendary soldiers, but he hadn't expected the first words to be so simple and human. He had imagined cold killing machines, not a man expressing genuine sympathy. "Thank you," Frank said. "Can your people really do it? Can you make the Empire pay?" Steve's amber eyes studied Frank carefully. "Yes, but I need to ask you something important. Is vengeance what you want, or justice?" Frank hadn't expected this question either. "What's the difference?" "Vengeance is simple. We kill those responsible, and anyone who stands with them," Steve said. "Justice is harder. It means making them understand what they did wrong and ensuring it never happens again." Frank thought about Lisa, about her dreams of becoming a scientist. "I want both," he admitted. Steve nodded. "Understood." Across the solar system, the news of the Titans' revival spread among top government officials. On Earth, the Security Council held an emergency meeting. "This is madness," said Councilor William Green, slamming his fist on the table. "The Titans were frozen because they couldn't be controlled, because they took actions no democratic government could authorize." "The Empire killed a child," replied Defense Secretary Joan Miller. "If we don't respond forcefully, they'll see it as weakness." "There are other ways to show strength," Green argued, "ways that don't involve unleashing 27 walking weapons of mass destruction." "The decision has been made," Secretary Miller said firmly. "The best we can do now is establish clear objectives and boundaries." Back at Complex Zero, Steve Harding stood before a holographic display of the galaxy. Known Imperial positions glowed red. The human colonies were marked in blue. "They outnumber us 100 to 1, Captain Karen Lewis said, studying the map. "Their technology is more advanced in most areas, but not all areas," Lieutenant Greg Bennett added, pointing to sections of the display. "Our stealth systems are better, and they've never faced anything like us before." Steve zoomed in on the Imperial patrol base nearest to New Haven Colony, the one responsible for Lisa's death. "We start here," he said. "A surgical strike, in and out with no witnesses left." Karen frowned. That's not how we used to operate. We never hid. Times have changed, Steve replied. We need to be smarter this time, more precise. In another part of the facility, Dr. Olivia Nash reviewed medical data from the revived Titans. Their enhanced bodies were adapting well, but their brain scans concerned her. She brought the information to General Wright. Their aggression levels are spiking, she explained, showing him the charts. The longer they're awake, the worse it gets. The Cryo process seems to have intensified some of the psychological issues. Can you control it? Wright asked. I can give them medication, Nash said, but it will dull their reflexes. It defeats the purpose of using them. Wright sighed. Monitor them closely. If any become unstable, report it immediately. That night, Frank Campbell called his wife before leaving for New Haven. Are they everything the stories said? Murray asked. They're more, Frank replied. And that's what scares me. Will it bring her back? Murray whispered. Frank closed his eyes, feeling the weight of what he had set in motion. No, but it might save other children. As Frank's shuttle departed, Steve watched from a window. When it disappeared from view, he turned to Karen. Prep the team, he ordered. We move against the Imperial base in 48 hours. The Imperial patrol base orbited a small moon at the edge of Empire space. It was shaped like a metal star with 5 points, each housing different parts of the base's operations. Guards patrolled the outer walls, confident in their security systems. No one had ever successfully attacked an Imperial military installation. 6 small ships approached the base, running dark with all systems at minimum power. They looked like debris floating through space. Inside the lead ship, Steve Harding and 5 other Titans checked their weapons one last time. "Com check," Steve said quietly. "Alpha team ready." Karen's voice came through his earpiece. "Beta team in position." Greg confirmed from another ship. "Charlie team standing by," said Lieutenant Sam Kelly. Steve nodded, satisfied. "Remember the plan. We move fast and quiet. No alarms until it's too late." The ships drifted closer to the base, using the moon's gravity to mask their approach. When they were less than a kilometer away, Steve gave the signal. "Execute." The Titans launched from their ships, using personal thrusters to cross the distance to the base. Their armor was black against the darkness of space, making them nearly impossible to see. They landed silently on the outer hull of the base. Steve checked his oxygen levels on his helmet display. They had 40 minutes of air. More than enough. "Cutting now," he said, activating a laser tool that burned through the metal hull. The superheated area created no flame in the vacuum of space, just a glowing red line that cooled to reveal a hole large enough for the Titans to slip through. Inside, artificial gravity pulled them down. They moved through the corridors with practiced precision. Each Titan knew exactly where to go. Steve and Karen headed for the command center. They encountered 2 guards at a security checkpoint. Before the guards could raise their weapons, Steve moved. He crossed the distance faster than a normal human could see, his enhanced muscles pushing him forward with incredible speed. His hand covered one guard's mouth while his other hand delivered a precise strike to the neck. The guard went limp. Karen dealt with the second guard just as efficiently. "Clear," she said. Across the base, the other Titan teams moved with similar deadly skill. They disabled security systems, neutralized guards, and secured key areas. Not a single alarm sounded. In the command center, Captain Zorvac was reviewing reports when the doors slid open. He looked up, expecting his officers. Instead, he saw 2 humans in black armor. "What is this?" he demanded, reaching for his weapon. Steve moved faster, crossing the room and lifting Zorvac by his throat. "Do you remember a human child?" Steve asked, his voice cold. 10 years old. Collecting leaves near New Haven Colony. Zorvac's eyes widened with recognition, then narrowed with defiance. A spy in a restricted zone. The Empire was justified. Steve tightened his grip. Her name was Lisa Campbell. Karen accessed the base's main computer. I've got the files. They've been watching New Haven for months. They plan to use any excuse to test our defenses. Steve's amber eyes locked onto Zorvek's. You didn't kill her by accident. You killed her to see how we would respond. For the first time, fear showed in Zorvek's face. Who are you? What are you? We're what you woke up, Steve replied. Throughout the base, the other Titans completed their missions. They downloaded Imperial military plans, planted explosives at key structural points, and dealt with any resistance they encountered. In the command center, Karen finished setting the base's reactor to overload. 5 minutes until critical failure, she reported. Steve activated his comm. All teams, complete your objectives and move to extraction points. He turned back to Zorvek. We could kill you, but instead, you're going to deliver a message. Steve released the captain and handed him a small data device. Everything we found here has already been sent to human command. We know you're planning an invasion. Zorvek snarled. The Empire cannot be threatened by a few enhanced soldiers. Steve smiled coldly. We're not a threat. We're a promise. As alarms finally began to sound throughout the base, Steve and Karen made their way to the extraction point. The other Titan teams were already boarding their ships. From a safe distance, they watched as the Imperial base exploded in a blinding flash of light. A single escape pod shot away from the destruction, carrying Captain Zorvek and the message the Titans wanted delivered. Back on Earth, General Wright reviewed the mission data with growing concern. They were planning an invasion all along, he told the Security Council. Lisa Campbell's death wasn't a random incident. It was a test. The Empire had miscalculated badly. They had expected a diplomatic protest, perhaps economic sanctions. Instead, they had awakened humanity's darkest weapons. And the Titans were just getting started. News of the destroyed Imperial base spread quickly through Empire space. In the Grand Palace on the Imperial homeworld, the Emperor paced before his military council. His 4 arms moved in agitated patterns as he spoke. How could one patrol base fall so easily? He demanded. Where were the alarms? The defenses? Grand Admiral Xel bowed his scaled head. The humans used unknown technology and tactics, Your Majesty. The attackers moved with impossible speed. Many guards didn't even have time to draw weapons. Captain Zorvek claims they were enhanced beings, said General Krev. Stronger and faster than normal humans. He described their eyes as unnaturally colored. The Emperor stopped pacing. Legends, stories to frighten children. The humans are weak, divided creatures. Perhaps not all of them, Admiral XL suggested carefully. Our intelligence suggests these may be their Titans, special warriors from their last major conflict. We thought they were disbanded. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. One base is an insult, not a defeat. Prepare a response. Show these humans what happens when they provoke the Empire. 3 days after the Titans' mission, alarms blared throughout New Haven Colony. People rushed to emergency shelters as 5 Imperial battlecruisers appeared in orbit. Frank Campbell hurried through the colony's command center. Are the defensive shields at full power? He asked the security team. Yes, sir, but they won't hold against that much firepower for long, the chief responded. We've sent distress signals to Earth. Frank nodded grimly. Evacuate the outer sections first. Move everyone toward the central shelters. The first Imperial shots hit the colony's shields, making the ground shake. Children cried as parents tried to calm them. Medical teams prepared for casualties. Just as the shields began to fail, 6 unmarked ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the colony. They were larger than the small vessels the Titans had used before, but still tiny compared to the Imperial battlecruisers. Inside the lead ship, Steve Harding addressed his team. They're responding exactly as we predicted. Hit their weapon systems first, then engines. We need 1 cruiser intact enough to send home with survivors. The Titan ships accelerated toward the Imperial fleet, moving in patterns too erratic for targeting systems to track effectively. They darted between laser fire, taking occasional hits but their advanced shields holding. Karen Lewis piloted her ship directly beneath the lead battlecruiser. "Deploying charges now," she reported, releasing magnetic explosives that attached to the cruiser's hull. Similar attacks came from the other Titan ships, each targeting vulnerable points on the Imperial vessels. The explosives detonated simultaneously, crippling 3 cruisers at once. On the colony's surface, people watched in amazement as the massive Imperial ships began losing power and drifting out of formation. The remaining 2 cruisers concentrated their fire on Steve's ship. His pilot, Lieutenant Sam Kelly, performed maneuvers that should have been impossible, but even with enhanced reflexes, they couldn't avoid every hit. "Hull breach in Section 3, shouted Greg Bennett from the weapons station. "Shields failing." Steve strapped himself into a boarding pod. "Continue the attack. I'm going to deliver our message personally." The pod launched toward the lead Imperial cruiser, a tiny projectile against the enormous vessel. It punched through the damaged hull, and Steve emerged into the ship's main corridor. Imperial soldiers fired at him, but he moved too quickly. His enhanced body shrugged off hits that would kill normal humans. He fought his way to the bridge, leaving unconscious or dead soldiers in his wake. On the bridge, he confronted the Imperial commander. "This is for New Haven," Steve said, before disabling the ship's main control systems. The battle ended quickly after that. 3 Imperial cruisers were destroyed. One was so badly damaged it could barely maintain life support. The final cruiser, the one Steve had boarded, was crippled but able to travel. As the Titans regrouped, they counted their losses. 3 of their own had died in the battle: Lieutenant Sam Kelly, Pete Martins, and Dana Ford. Their bodies were recovered and brought back to New Haven. That evening, a solemn ceremony was held for the fallen Titans. Steve stood before their shrouded forms, his face showing rare emotion. "They died as they lived," he said to the gathered colonists and remaining Titans, "protecting humanity." Frank Campbell approached Steve after the ceremony. "The Empire will respond with even greater force next time." Steve nodded. "We're counting on it. Now we take the fight to them." The Titan ship moved silently through Imperial space, its stealth systems making it nearly invisible to sensors. Inside, Steve, Karen, Greg, and 7 other Titans prepared for their most dangerous mission yet. Their target, the main Imperial shipyard in the Velex system. "According to our intelligence, they're building a new class of warships there," Steve explained, pointing to the holographic display. "Ships designed specifically to attack human colonies." "Security will be tight," Karen noted. "Even for us, this won't be easy." Steve nodded. "That's why we're not going in guns blazing this time. We infiltrate, gather data, and plant charges at key points." The ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel far from any patrol routes. They used a small shuttle for the final approach, drifting toward the massive shipyard with minimal power. The shipyard was a wonder of engineering, a ring-shaped structure with dozens of construction docks extending outward like spokes. Half-built warships hung in space, surrounded by worker pods and supply vessels. The Titan's shuttle slipped between patrol routes and docked at a maintenance port. They exited wearing Imperial worker uniforms over their combat gear. "Remember, blend in until we reach the central hub," Steve reminded them. "We have 4 hours before the next security sweep." They moved through the shipyard's corridors, their enhanced hearing allowing them to avoid patrols. When they encountered workers, they nodded and kept moving. Just another maintenance crew. In the central hub, Greg bypassed the security system, giving them access to the shipyard's main computer. Karen began downloading ship designs and deployment plans. "Steve, you need to see this," she said suddenly. "These aren't just warships. They're planet killers." Steve looked at the schematics on the screen. The new Imperial vessels carried weapons designed to render planets uninhabitable. "They're planning to destroy our colonies completely," Greg whispered, "not just attack them." As they processed this information, an alert sounded nearby. But surprisingly, it wasn't directed at them. Imperial guards rushed past their hiding spot toward a disturbance in another section. "What's happening?" Steve asked. Greg accessed the security feed. "Some kind of attack, but not human." The screen showed creatures fighting Imperial guards. They had 6 limbs and gray skin, members of the Vexari species. "The Vexari are supposed to be loyal Imperial subjects," Karen said, confused. "Apparently not anymore," Steve replied. He made a quick decision. Change of plans. "Greg, keep downloading. Karen, come with me." Steve and Karen moved toward the disturbance. They found Imperial guards surrounding a group of Vexari rebels. "We die for freedom," one Vexari shouted in broken human language, apparently prepared for a last stand. Steve exchanged a look with Karen. Then he attacked the Imperial guards from behind. The Vexari, seeing unexpected allies, fought with renewed energy. When the guards were defeated, the lead Vexari approached Steve cautiously. "You are human." "We're Titans," Steve answered. "And it seems we have a common enemy." The Vexari leader introduced himself as Zix. "Empire enslaved our world. Takes our children for labor camps. When we saw humans fight back, we decided to fight too." "There are more rebel groups?" Karen asked. Zix nodded. "Many species, all waiting for sign that Empire can be hurt." Steve realized they had stumbled upon something bigger than their mission. "We're planning to cripple this shipyard. Want to help?" The combined force of Titans and Vexari rebels moved through the shipyard, planting explosives and freeing captured workers from other subjugated species. Word spread quickly, and more aliens joined them. By the time they reached the main control center, their small infiltration team had become a rebellion. Greg finished uploading a message to all Imperial communication channels, video evidence of Empire atrocities against various species, including Lisa Campbell's death. "The charges are set," Karen reported. "We have 20 minutes. Steve turned to Zix. "Can your people spread the word to other rebel groups? Tell them the time to rise up is now." Zix's large eyes blinked in agreement. "We will. Empire not expects united resistance." As they headed for their escape vessels, Steve realized they had found more than allies. They had ignited a galactic uprising. The shipyard exploded behind them as they fled into space, a blinding flash that could be seen from nearby systems. It wasn't just a strategic blow against the Empire's military might. It was a beacon of hope for countless oppressed worlds. The war had just changed completely. 3 weeks after the shipyard mission, the galaxy looked very different. News of Imperial atrocities spread across all communication channels. 26 worlds had declared independence from the Empire. Their combined fleets now protected each other against Imperial retaliation. On Earth, the Security Council met to discuss the rapidly changing situation. Screens showed battles and uprisings across Empire space. "The Titans did more than we ever expected," Counselor Patricia Bell said. "They turned a single act of revenge into a galactic revolution." "But at what cost?" asked Counselor Henry Davis. "The Empire is wounded and desperate. Their remaining forces are gathering for a final push against our colonies." General Wright pulled up a tactical display. "The Titans and their new allies are coordinating to meet the Imperial fleet here, near the Arcturus system. It will be the decisive battle." Meanwhile, Steve Harding led a small team on the most dangerous mission yet. They slipped past Imperial defenses to reach the homeworld. Their target, the Imperial Palace itself. Steve, Karen, Greg, and 2 other Titans moved silently through the capital city. The streets were nearly empty as citizens stayed inside, afraid of the spreading conflict. Guards were focused on the sky, expecting an attack from space, not infiltrators on the ground. "The Emperor's private chambers are in the North Tower," Greg said, checking the palace schematics they had obtained from rebel informants. "Remember, we're not here to kill him," Steve reminded them. "That would just create a martyr. We have a different mission." They scaled the palace walls at night, their enhanced strength making the climb easy. Imperial security systems were sophisticated, but the Titans had studied them carefully. They knew exactly how to move to avoid detection. Inside the palace, they encountered light resistance. Most elite guards had been sent to the front lines. The few who remained were no match for the Titans. They reached the Emperor's private chambers and found him preparing to evacuate. He spun around as they entered, his 4 arms reaching for weapons that weren't there. "You," he hissed, recognizing the description of the Titans from reports. "Have you come to kill me?" Steve stepped forward. "If we wanted you dead, you would be already." He placed a small device on the floor. It projected a hologram of Lisa Campbell, smiling in her school uniform, then shifted to show her final moments as Imperial ships fired on her. "One child," Steve said quietly. "You killed one human child. And look what it unleashed." The Emperor's face showed no remorse. "Empires are not built on mercy." "No," Karen agreed, "but they fall without it." Greg activated a communication link. On screens throughout the palace and across Imperial broadcasts, reports began showing the uprising spreading across the galaxy. Species that had been enemies were now fighting together against Imperial rule. "Your empire is already falling," Steve told the Emperor. "But you have a choice about how many more die before it's over." Outside the palace, explosions lit up the sky as the combined rebel fleet engaged the last Imperial defenses. The Emperor watched his world burning. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "Surrender," Steve said simply. "End the fighting. Recognize the independence of any world that wants it." For a moment, it seemed the Emperor would refuse. Then, looking again at the image of Lisa Campbell, he slowly nodded. 3 days later, representatives from all affected worlds gathered to sign the new Galactic Accord. The Empire would continue to exist, but greatly reduced in size and power. All species would have equal representation in the new Galactic Council. At the signing ceremony, Frank and Marie Campbell stood as honored guests. Their daughter's death had changed the course of history. Afterward, the Titans faced their own uncertain future. Most chose to return to cryosleep, feeling out of place in a peaceful galaxy. But Steve, Karen, and a few others decided to stay awake. "What will you do now?" Frank asked Steve as they stood at Lisa's memorial on New Haven Colony. Steve looked at the stars above them. "Help build something worth protecting." "Isn't that what soldiers are supposed to do when the fighting stops?" Frank placed a hand on the memorial stone. "Lisa would have liked that." Steve nodded and placed his Titan insignia beside the flowers at the memorial. "One child," he said quietly. "Sometimes that's all it takes to change everything."